And I'm here with my good friend, Shannon McCombs, right here on the Andrew Burnett Show. Shannon, how are you doing today?
Good. Things are good in Nashville. How about you, Andrew?
Going good, going good. So, in the midst of COVID-19 and quarantine and all that's going on right now, I'm sure you've seen lots of changes go on in country music. So, what's the change that you see going on right now in country music?
Well, probably like we realized that, when the world literally came to a halt, um, the music business came to a halt. And for a while, jobs in the music industry, of course, just like it is with everybody else's, jobs went down. And um, when things did come to a halt, I was out of work for a bit until we all kind of figured out what to do. There were advertisers that went away and that sort of thing. And um, little by little, they started doing Zoom interviews, to promote the artist did. And I do a lot of interviews. So that picked up. I'd never used Zoom before, had never had a reason to. I'm pretty tech savvy, but I just had never had a reason to use Zoom. So once we started that, we're back to doing that sort of thing. The artist can promote through Zoom interviews, and they figured out how to do shows online. So that has been such a huge change. Thank God for technology that has helped us through this.
Yes, absolutely. So, being involved in TV and both radio, what would you say really helped you get the start and who influenced you to really push you to get into this type of industry?
Yep. Well, I started out in radio, uh, fresh out of high school. I knew I wanted to be in radio when I was probably maybe a sophomore. By then, I was really sure that's what I wanted to go into. I knew that it was going to be in music. Early on, I thought I wanted to go into some sort of concert production, but I didn't exactly know what that was. And thought that radio would, it literally, I think back on that, and it's like I wanted to be surrounded by music. So radio was my in there. There were several radio stations, not in my hometown, but in surrounding counties from me. There wasn't anything close by. So right out of high school, I started knocking on doors and not realizing that you really kind of needed some sort of experience, which I did not have. And I was really shy. So radio seemed to be kind of an end to what I wanted to do, to be around music.
So, I'm sure you've been able to share many interviews on the air and through radio and TV. What's one that will always stick with you as most memorable?
Um, Boy, you got me on that one. Let's see. I have been blessed with a lot of interviews for sure. And I will say that this the answer to this might be different on different days, but as soon as you said that, what pops to mind is an interview I did once with Steven Tyler of Aerosmith. And it's when I was working at KDF Rock. It was a rock station here in Nashville. Just to kind of put things in perspective, at that time, the artists that you hear on classic rock radio now, those were the artists that were current at that time, late 80s, early 90s. But working with him was pretty outstanding. He came in and I had no idea, of course, what to expect, with rock stars and the images that they had. And back then, of course, we didn't have internet, so you couldn't Google what they were doing. And I just knew of this really wild reputation he had. So I was scared to death of him. So when he walked in the studio, he was everything not to be scared of. He walked in, took my hand, kissed my hand, and did kind of a curtsy of sorts. And that was kind of the start of the interview. And at the time when we started to play a song, I'm trying to think what it was. I think it was "Love in an Elevator." About the time that was out. Are you a rock music fan?
Yes.
Okay, it was about the time that "Love in an Elevator" was out, and put the song on the radio. And he said, "Hold on a second, I've got something for you." So he dashes out of the control room, and right behind me in the control room was this huge window into the hallway. And during that song, he danced up and down the hallway throughout the song. And then literally as the song was ending, he came back in and just plopped right down on the stool. I mean, he knew exactly that he had just like literally taken my breath away. So that's
Wow.
pretty memorable. Yeah.
Yeah. So you recently got nominated to be in the Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame. Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about the emotions that first came to your mind when you heard that you had been nominated for such a great Radio Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow. Thank you for bringing that up. Overwhelmed. I literally got the message on my Twitter account. They had sent me a direct message on my Twitter account, which, I hadn't checked for a while, and I read it, and then I thought, now is this right? Because it's on my, sometimes you get a lot of junk mail on Twitter, and I I was afraid to get excited, so it was for the president of Tennessee Radio Hall of Fame, which is Pamela Furr, and I thought, well, before I get excited, I've got to find out. So I went to another source. I went over to Facebook and messaged her, and I said, "Hey, did you just send me a message on Twitter?" And then she confirmed that it was her. So then I was like overjoyed. But for, until I could get in touch with her, I just couldn't believe it. So very excited.
Wow. So you've had the chance to work with CMT and GAC and even Access Hollywood. Share with us a little bit about what interviews you've had throughout the years that have really just stuck out with you, whether it be a funny memory or whether it be just something that started a friendship.
Um, Boy, that's went through when I was working at the Opry. You speak of friendships, that's where my mind goes. Is I worked with the Opry. I did the show on CMT for a while, the TV part. Then right after that, the Opry started a syndicated radio show, and they had hired me to do the backstage interviews for that show, and that's where I really was able to make a lot of good friends. Because my job weekly was to sit down and talk with these artists, and so pretty much every time the door opened at the Opry, I was there, and they would give me a list of who they wanted to interview that week. And um, I mean, when I think back, like Jeannie Seeley, an Opry star, is one of my dearest friends. You know, and she plays the Opry now, and she was always so sweet to me when I was out there working. But it was great to work with little Jimmy Dickens. Uh, when he was out there, you knew you were always going to have a fun night. Whether you're watching him on stage or some comments he might make backstage. Jim Brown was a friend. um, Jan Howard was one of my best friends. She passed away at the very early part of this pandemic. Um, but Joe Diffie was a friend. Another great one we've lost in the last year. Lost a lot of Opry stars this year.
Yeah, and even Charlie Pride passed away. Did you have a memory that you would like to share about him?
Charlie Pride, yes. He, I don't know if you've ever worked with him or not, but he loved the Zodiac. Like when you met him, he would ask you when you were born. Uh, and so he and I, that was one of the things he would bring up, and he knew I was a Capricorn. And when I would see him, he said, like, I remember once introducing him to my boyfriend, and he asked him what his sign was. And he said, "Oh, that's not going to mix. That's not going to mix well." He would always do that, and he was right on that one. Um, but anytime I would see Charlie, that would be something we would talk about, and he really kept up with that sort of thing. He was right on it.
Wow. So throughout the years, I'm sure through working with the Grand Ole Opry, you've got to see a lot of memory breaking stage appearances that not many people would actually get to see. And I mean, what would be one of those legendary appearances that when they actually got to step into that circle that really just amazed you?
Boy, you're right. I've seen some good ones, because a lot of with the interviews, most anybody within that 13-year period that I worked that performed for the first time in the Opry, I would do their Opry debut interview. But going beyond debut night, one of the most memorable things on stage was the night that Carrie Underwood was inducted as a member. And the Opry at that point they were doing 2 shows a night. You know, they'd had the early show and then there'd be a break and they'd have the late show. And she was inducted in the early show, but I was there still working when the late show came on. And I remember Vince Gill he must have been hosting that portion, and he got Carrie and pulled her onto the stage to square dance. With the, you know, when the square dancers came on and did their when they were dancing, he pulled her on to square dance, and I thought that was just such a moment to see, because you know she looked up to Vince, and here's Vince pulling her out to dance, and you know it was her big night, and there was always an Opry moment anytime that you worked there, you know, anytime you were in that building.
And I tell you what, that's amazing that you mentioned her, because she's actually from North Carolina. So amazing that you bring that up.
Yeah, y'all are very proud of her there, aren't you?
Absolutely. I'm hoping to get her on this show one of these days.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah, she's a lovely person.
Well, Shannon, I'll tell you, we have had a great time with you. Thank you so much for coming on. Tell folks how they can find out more about you and what you do in country music.
I have a website, and that's shannonCountry.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I try to post pictures and comments and maybe video if I have it of interviews of people I've worked with recently. And so hopefully I'll see you over there. I really appreciate you contacting me. It was such a nice gesture. Thank you. I know you've talked to many friends of mine. I saw you do an interview with one of my best friends, Keith Bilbrey.
Man, I tell you what, me and Keith have a good time. He's always got a good story just ready to share. So, you know, you're welcome back on the show anytime, because I tell you, I always love a good story about country music. And that's just all about what me and Keith was actually talking about. And I found this out, that country music is more of a family that's tight knit. Everybody knows everybody. And once you meet them, they're your family. So, welcome to the Andrew Burnett Show family, Shannon. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for being a part. God bless you, and we look forward to having you on again sometime.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. You have a good day now.
You too. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Bye bye.
Bye.